Joining. So, hello everyone. Before we get started, I just want to let you know that this program is being recorded and will be available on the Dyckman Farmhouse Museum YouTube after this presentation. My name is Caroline McCarthy, and I'm the Digital Content and Programs Manager at the museum. I want to welcome you to DFM's new virtual series, History in Focus. History in Focus explores relevant topics in Upper Manhattan history and the surrounding areas. The theme for our first season is Immigrant Histories in Upper Manhattan. During this lecture, if you have any questions for the speaker, please use the Q&A function, and we will get to those questions at the end. This morning, we are joined by Dr. Ramona Hernandez, Professor of Sociology at the City College of New York, City University of New York, CUNY, and the Director of the CUNY Dominican Studies Institute. Dr. Hernandez is presenting Juan Rodriguez, The Immigrant Spirit. This talk focuses on the historical events that shaped Juan Rodriguez, a Black man who spoke his mind and demanded to be heard. It also discusses the push and pull factors behind Rodriguez's migration and his decision to settle in a land that would later be named New York City. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Dr. Ramona Hernandez.
Gracias, Caroline, for such a nice introduction, and thank you for having me speak about a subject that, though we know little about, it's something that keep us at night. So this is to say that we continue to do research on Juan Rodriguez. There are so many questions that need to be answered to continue to put his history together. But the good thing is that we just recently hired at the Dominican Studies Institute 2 additional researchers, a paleographer and a machine learning data scientist. So we are, going with everything we can in all kinds of technology to see how much, what else we can add to this. We can bring to the forefront and complete somehow his story. So let me begin with the scenario of where Juan Rodriguez come from, but also what shaped him. And this is important to us because Juan Rodriguez is a man that is, this is the beginning of the 17th century. This is 1613, the first decade, who chose a character, a spirit, an identity that is very difficult for a lot of people to understand. Here you have a man that is Black, that is free, and that speaks his mind without, fear. And at the time, of course, this is not a common thing, particularly in this part of the Atlantic. So people have doubts, and people ask you, I mean, how is this possible that you have sort of like this, in a sense, unique, in a sense, right? Somebody who kinds of deviate from what was the norm at the time, right? So, and this is why it's important to sort of make the connection and the linkages between who he was and where he came from. So I'm going to read so that we that I don't get lost, okay? And you have a possibility of following what I'm saying. In December of 1492, the island of Quisqueya became the possession of Spain. The island was then baptized with the name of La Española, In both, the land and its people were transformed forever. La Española became the Spanish Empire's headquarters, the center of Spanish expansion and colonialism within the so-called New World, or as it was named later, the American continent, or simply the Americas. It is from La Española that famous conquistadores will leave to conquer all the land in the New World. This includes Puerto Rico, Cuba, Mexico, Peru, you name it, all of them. And as I was reviewing and preparing for this talk, something I noticed that I think it's important to share with you. While the U.S., when you think of the U.S., you think about always, as a land of immigrant people. So it's sort of like a synonym, the United States immigrants. And this have to do with the narrative of the formation of the U.S. It's a nation, it's a country, it's a society created, formed, shaped by immigrants. What is interesting is that when you think of the rest of the continent, when you think of America Latina specifically, I doubt if you will ever hear the word immigrant attached to the formation of Mexico, or the formation of República Dominicana, or the formation of Colombia. What you hear is conquistadores, which is a very charged term. It's someone who comes and takes away, what he found in that place. It's very, very different. So I learned in kind of I put together that the beginning of this nation had to do with immigrant. I had to learn that here, because in my mind it had always been conquistadores come and they take, right? So this is what's happening with the New World, and this is happening specifically from La Española. All of the conquistadores, from Hernán Cortés to Juan, who goes to Mexico, Francisco Pizarro, who goes to Peru, Juan Ponce de León, who goes to Puerto Rico. They spend time in La Española, putting together their expedition and go into these places and do what they did. So La Española is that center. It is also the center of the government of the kingdom, right? Because it is the first European colony. La Española will be the scenario where many events will take place for the very first time in the New World. Among this is European enslavement of people. First, with the Aboriginal population, whom Spaniards found there. And later, in 1502, with African Black peoples, who will be brought in by force. It is also in La Española where resistance to the enslavement of people by Europeans began, both from the native population as well as from African Blacks. The first rebellion of the Aboriginal people occurred in November of 1493, when the Taínos burned down the first structure constructed by the Spaniards in the New World, called El Fuerte de la Navidad. This is something that sometimes historians sort of overlook, that the resistance against the foreign forces began there in La Española. And when you think, for instance, of one of the Aboriginal women, Ana Caona, who decided to be executed by the Spaniard rather than giving up. So this is the scenario from where Juan Rodriguez is coming out. So you have, the island is divided in five chiefdoms, and one of the chiefdom, it's headed by a woman. And this woman, rather than negotiating with the Spaniards, decided to be executed by them, and that went down to history. And she might be perhaps the first woman that the Spaniard assassinated just formally, right? So the second rebellion takes place, and this is very early, right? This is in 1493. The second resistance, and I think I failed to show you. Let me see this. This is happening 120 years exactly before the first colonies established in the U.S., everything that I'm saying, right? So let me show you how the New World looked like. I couldn't find a better map, and this is something that I realized that we need to put together because all of the maps that we have out there doesn't show exactly what I wanted to capture here. But all of the brown stuff that you see, this is owned by Spain. And some of the other things that are not owned by Spain, it's land that has not been yet formally taken by anyone. But everything, it's owned. In the center of this ownership, it's going to be established a la Española, which is this little piece of land that you see here, that today is the Republic, the Dominican Republic and the Republic of Haiti. So the second resistance crystallized on Christmas Day in 1522, when African enslaved Black people broke free, burning down Diego Colon's plantation and destroying everything they found on their path as they escaped to freedom, hidden in the thick and inhospitable mountains of La Española. The rebellion has been recorded in the history books as the first rebellion in the New World by enslaved African Black people. And this is important to emphasize. Sometimes this is overlooked. We know that by 1502, there are 1502, 1503, they are already enslaved African Black people in La Española. And what is interesting is that, we had documentation in the Dominican Studies Institute. We have one of the largest archives of primary sources dealing with the 15th and 16th centuries. And what is interesting is that the governor, Nicolas de Obando, writes to the king, this is 1502, 1503, and requests the king to send African enslaved people specifically from certain regions in Africa and not from others. And in his writing, what you see is that he said that there were, that Africans who came from X region did not follow orders. That it was very difficult for them to understand that they were slaved. And no matter what the Spaniard did, they just didn't get it. And the next thing was escape. And once they escape, they were not found anymore. So what you have in La Española is a sort of like a dual society, and we're not going to say triple with the Taino, because the Taino are going to disappear very, very early, but definitely a dual society where you have one that is very, formal, that respond to the kingdom, and then there is the other one that is informal. It's made and commanded by runaway slaves, the cimarrones, who began early. They got here today in the same day they ran away. And some of you might ask the question, how was that possible? Well, you don't have many people in La Española. We're not talking about 100 people in La Española, Spaniards bringing slaves and trying to control enslaved people and trying to control them, right? So this is, it wasn't something that was established in the way that it will be established later, and that they will be able to control later the people that they brought by force. So this is the very beginning of the slavery process there, and you're going to have those issues. And once a community has been formed of cimarrones, so that became an attraction for others who were just dreaming day in and day out to escape, right? So, so here we go. I think, let me see if I have some, this is La Española, the whole island. It's a physical map. You don't have much in there. And then, let me see, Spain, had all that land that I show you. And what is interesting is that Spain created this sort of bank, central bank called Casa de Contratación de Sevilla. Let me put it here. And if you wanted, anybody who wanted to do business with the colonies needed to go through La Casa de Contratación de Sevilla in Spain. Anything that came out of the colonies have to be tabulated and get through La Casa de Contratación de Sevilla. This was sort of like the central bank. And of course, this is a time in which you have other nations that are seeing what Spain is getting from these places, and that are also embark on their own expeditions, as you know very well, because you know the history of the US much better than I do, that you have people running around in different places and trying to find land. So this Casa de Contratación de Sevilla is going to create issues for Spain. They regulated and restricted everything, of course, and that meant that all the wealth that was being generated in all the colonies that Spain had went specifically to one place. See, and see what we have here. Sorry. As the enslaved, let's see. Okay, similarly, it is in La Española where manumission came into play for the first time in the continent. In 1505, as early as 1505, when the Spanish King Ferdinand ordered the crown's colonial governor in Santo Domingo, Nicolás de Obando, to spread the promise of manumission among the very early and still relatively small groups of enslaved Blacks in exchange for a given number of years on slave labor. Most of these early slaves were assigned to work in the mining of gold and the sugar plantations that have already begun in La Española, and the constructions of walls in La Española as well. And the offer of manumission was used in an attempt to stop them from escaping into the mountains, as well as to elicit as much work from them as possible. So this is the scenario. You have, in a sense, that I want you to think about this. Manumission is instituted in 1505. This is a few years after they have arrived in La Española. This is a few years, 3 to 4 years after they have brought in enslaved African blacks. You know, and from a sociological point of view, when you see the state, when you see the government instituting, implementing policies that somehow give some space to the oppressed people, you know, you got to think that something is going on. And what is going on is that somehow there is some space here for, you know, the authorities is somehow trying to convince the enslaved population that if they do what they need to do, they will be freed at some point. And so don't do anything now. Don't rebel. Don't go into the mountains. Don't stop working. You know, the kinds of things that they did constantly, right? And the most severe one was going into the mountains. You know, they are rebels. You know, that had felt that had given historians lots of stories to tell, because they were in the mountains for years and decades, and the Spaniards simply could not deal with it. It didn't matter how many experts they brought from Spain or from the other places, they simply couldn't subdue them. And so implementing manumission, you know, I see it, you know, from this sociological point of view as a way of convincing them and making them to do the work and sort of minimize the friction, right? And, you know, in a sense, you know, when you think about this carefully, that also indicates that somehow the Spaniards felt that that was the only way to go, that they had no other choice but to do this, right? To find some kind of space, to give some kind of space to the enslaved population if they wanted to get something. So this is happening in that place. In the meantime, Spain went to war with everyone. The English, the French, the Dutch, but there was only one Spanish Armada and a vast territory to protect. This large territory covered what was then called Tierra Firme, or, you know, South America, Central America, that kind of land. And also the highly porous Caribbean islands that, you know, that also include La Española. No Spanish vessels could cross the Atlantic Sea into the Caribbean without facing the other European gangsters that awaited the Spaniards. Almost nothing came in from Spain. Almost nothing went from the Spanish Caribbean to Spain. By this time, many of the Caribbean islands are either abandoned by Spain or would eventually fall into other European hands. This is the time when you see, for instance, that the Caribbean, you know, got into the hands of the English, the hands of the French, and the hands of the Dutch, actually. And we have the Dutch Caribbean, the Spanish Caribbean, the French Caribbean, and of course the English Caribbean, right? So this is the time when this is happening. And I think that the last piece of land that is taken from the Caribbean, taken away from Spain, because Spain owned all of this, right? But taken forcibly from Spain is Jamaica, that I think it was in 1655 by force, right? So this is happening. Let's see. And, you know, I have this Pirates of the Caribbean that is not the movie. This is a complicated moment in the history of the Americas, but particularly of the Caribbean, because it is so open and it's so it is so difficult for Spain to come to the Caribbean that there is a chapter in Dominican history and in the history of Puerto Rico and Cuba specifically that speaks about a syndrome the inhabitants of these places develop. And the syndrome is the abandonment of the mother. So since Spain cannot come to these places, the people who were living there, the Spaniards, began to leave whenever they had a chance, and those who remained there felt abandoned. And when I said that Spain couldn't come, what I'm saying is that the records show that the situado, that is the group of ships that came from Spain with all of the commodities, all of the merchandises, from the wine to the bread, everything that the Spaniard ate and wore came from Spain to this point. All of that, there was a moment in which those embarkations took 5 years to come. So you saw one this year, and then you needed to wait another 5 years to see another embarkation to come from Spain. And that then, historians, there's another group of historians that believe that this is the time precisely when the Dominican identity and the identity of some of the others, but in our case, that the Dominican identity began to be shaped and to be formed. Imagine this is a place that is, in a sense, isolated, with this group of people that we don't know how many they are in the mountains, that are constantly day in and day out. They never stop harassing the Spaniard, day in and day out. So Spaniards have to protect themselves from the outsiders, which is this. And you see all the walls that had been, I don't have a picture of that, but what they did was to create walls to protect the cities where they were. So they were protecting themselves from these gangsters, from outside forces, but they were also protecting themselves from inside forces. And those inside forces were the cimarrones that had been in the mountains. By this time, they already have grandchildren that had been born and raised in the mountains and got nothing to do with this side of society. And I emphasize this because this is a century, we're talking about basically 100 years, that it is the least studied for whatever reason, and it applies to the entire Caribbean, the least studied century. What happened actually to the Spaniards who were there, how they evolved. So some historians claim that Dominicans then, rather than eating bread with flour, began to use cassave, which is it's a flour that comes from a root, yuca, and the Taino used that as a staple. So Dominican began to use that as their bread and so on, and began to create their own clothing. There's something that I need to also emphasize here. And Caroline, please, I want you to tell me how good I am on the time. When you look at the Dominican people and you think of Mexico, Peru, Colombia, Ecuador, and you have all of these nations represented in New York City, you see that Dominicans are the least religious one. Religious in the sense of following Catholicism, right? As the book, as the Bible, describe and show, right? So they have the very low rate of participating in Sunday Mass, so they don't go to church. And one of the precepts that are, fundamental for them is the baptism. In addition to the baptism, marriage, for instance, the Dominican Republic has one of the lowest rate of formal marriage in America Latina since day one. So it is in this century that Dominicans began to stop going to church. And the reason for that, historians said, is that they had no clothing. There's a moment in the history of the Dominican people that they were practically naked. And this is when they began to create clothing with whatever they could in La Española, simply because the material that they needed to do that, or the clothing, didn't come on time. Since they didn't have clothing and the church required a specific dress code, in America Latina, you don't just go to church with a spaghetti, blouse and things like that. So they stopped going to church. This is the reason why. And then so we are a little bit different from the rest of other colleagues in America Latina. I wanted to point that because that speaks about that identity that in somehow it's also going to affect, the whole vision that, the vision that people have all over with regards to the Dominican people. It is, people, religious people believe that there will never be a Dominican Pope. And the reason, though, Catholicism in the Americas began in La Española, and the first cathedral is there, and so on, and tarara, tarara. And the reason for that is because, we don't follow the religion in the way that we should. So, so this went on. Let's see where I am. So, this went on and on for almost 100 years. In the meantime, illicit trading was rampant in La Española. Proto-Dominicans learned the foreigners' languages, their religions, and their cultures. They even became friends and named their children with the foreigners' first names. Enough is enough, was enough for the Spanish kingdom. Anger by the Proto-Dominicans who did not obey the laws, nor any Spanish authority in the island. And in 1605, the Spanish authorities burned every single, single Western and every single town in the Western and the northern village of La Española, in order the relocation of the inhabitants of those villages to the eastern and southern parts of the colony. This period is known, and I'm going to show it to you now. This period is known in Dominican historiography as Las Devastaciones. And three major developments are associated with this historic moment. La Española would begin what has been called in Dominican history as the century of mystery. So this is, nothing. They had no clothing, nothing. There's a problem now with food because all of these towns that you have here, precisely where the Republic of Haiti is located today, they were burned down, and people were given 24 hours to vacate the place. Otherwise they were hung, and it happened. And so they were relocated here in this space. So imagine everybody coming here suddenly. Food doesn't grow in one day, and with the conditions that I have described. So these people, while they doing this, they are defending themselves from outsiders and defending themselves from inside forces. So this is the situation of La Española. This is the scenario from Juan Rodriguez come from. So the French colony of Saint-Domingue, today the Republic of Haiti, will be established on the west of the island here, quietly. And this is more or less, I try to get a map. I realized also that I didn't have a good map that showed you how to look. This is, I think, a 1700 map. But I wanted to show you the one in the 1600. So they are establishing a colony here quietly. That people that are here are not going to find out until many years later. They're going to learn that they are French people who had established a full-fledged colony that they call Saint-Domingue, with full-fledged production and enslaved African Blacks. So those two things are happening, but something else is happening, and that is an autonomous and indigenous identity will begin to emerge, which is the Dominican identity. All of those three things are happening simultaneously. There, let's see. And it is in this century that Juan Rodriguez is born. Juan Rodriguez, a free Black mulatto man from Santo Domingo. I think I have a picture. This is an imaginary picture, okay? There's no drawing at this time for Juan Rodriguez. Mulatto man from Santo Domingo, also known as Española, boarded the forge John Tobias, a Dutch ship en route to New Amsterdam. Rodriguez had been employed by the captain of the ship. At this time, people from the Dutch Republic were trading heavily with the native population in the island of Manhattan, known today as New York City. Historical records indicate, and this is what we are talking about. These are the historical records that we are talking about. Important for you to know, this is, I put it in there so that you have an idea, but this is Dutch. This is written in Dutch going back to the 1600s. So it's not even Dutch, right? Today it's 1600. And we needed to secure experts in Holland, as well as in the Dominican Republic, to be able to put together his story, because as you know, his story is in both places. And it's interesting that there is a piece of his story that is here, and perhaps that is the most difficult one to get at this point for us. We are continuing to do research in both places, both meaning La República Dominicana and Holland, reviewing records to see if for whatever reason his name comes up again. So this is what we're doing. We have suspicion that there's a possibility that if that his name might pop out again for some reasons that we might discuss during the time of discussion here. But this is what we're talking about. There is let me finish with this. Indicate that Juan Rodriguez had very good linguistic skills, which he likely gained through interactions with smugglers in his native land in La Española. It's a fact. It's a given. This is why the towns are moved drastically. The Spaniards couldn't wait anymore. There was negotiations with Dominicans. Don't do this. Don't do this. Don't do this. And Dominicans didn't listen. We have records of Dominicans incarcerated for smuggling. We have records of women incarcerated for doing transactions with the foreigners, the Dutch and the English and the French. So the Spaniards simply wasted their time in trying for Dominicans to convince Dominicans to stop doing this. Illicit trade was so pervasive in La Española, that when the last consultant came from Spain, sent by the king, he went back and said, look, there's nothing that you can do. In that place, everybody trades illegally, everybody. And this is interesting to me. This is something that we need to do more research, because when, he reports it, everybody, and, when the report said everybody, I immediately suspected women. And yes, we have found women incarcerated for doing that. But the other question that comes to mind is whether somehow enslaved people were also doing this thing. In addition to the overwhelming now Black, mulatto, free population that you have in La Española. Remember, manumission is from 1505. And this is the 1613. So you have 100 years of people there that had been not just mixing, but that had acquired their freedom. And so this is the scenario. We assume that he spoke one of the languages spoken by the natives. We know because this is what the Spaniards accused the Dominican people. They were speaking all kinds of languages that were not Spanish, and that was considered a crime. That would explain his employment by the Dutch. Rodriguez also knew about preparing skin hide to sell in the market or trade with Europeans. This is exactly one of the things that is developed in La Española in the 1600 and the 17th century. The sugar plantation collapsed, as you know, precisely. There's no market for the sugar. How could there be a market when they couldn't send the merchandise? So the sugar industry began in La Española, the first, and collapsed in La Española. So the inhabitants, they are turning into something that didn't require investment, and that was animals that were rampant, running around in different in the whole island. In the skin, as you know, was very valuable at the time because it was used for all kinds of products. In the industry. So Rodriguez was an expert because Dominicans were experts on doing this. This was what they were doing and surviving at the time when that sugar industry collapsed. So skin hide was a very valuable commodity at the time, particularly for the development of European manufacturing industry. This is something he did for living back in La Española. Let's see. I don't think so. Those are the documents, and what you have on the right is a transcription in Dutch, and we also have a translation in English of the document in case you wanted to see it at some point. Just write to us, and let's see. And here is where we are. Historical records indicate that once the Dutch captain finished his business, Rodriguez told the captain that he was not going to continue to the Dutch Republic, that he wanted to stay, and that if his wish was not granted, then he was going to jump from the vessel. Remember, we got this information from the Dutch documents. The captain had no choice but to leave Rodriguez on the Hudson after paying him his salary. Rodriguez stayed in 1613. And is recorded as being living along the line of the Hudson River in 1614. His residence on the Hudson is described by Captain Tobias, who found him trading with other Dutch mercantilists. The description of Juan Rodriguez are part of a legal case between two Dutch mercantilists who accuse each other of stealing the point on the Hudson, where each traded with the Aboriginal population. They were, like today you have a space and that's identified with you. So therefore, all the business cannot be put there. Another businessman cannot come in there. So Rodriguez worked for both, obviously, first in 13 for one, and then in 14 for the other. And that anger the Dutch, not Rodriguez, of course. And they took their case after fighting with Rodriguez. They took their case to court because it wasn't Rodriguez the point here. The point is that they were fighting for who was going to keep the space that they have already uncovered in Mark as a business place, right? We almost finished. We do not know the exact reason why Rodriguez decided to stay, but one possible explanation may be the fact that while on Manhattan Island, Rodriguez would not have to engage in contraband to do his business. The Rodriguez that stays is a man who comes from a society where Black people had known freedom for a long time. So, when people tell me he came looking for freedom, he had that. There's no question. He had more than that. So the Rodriguez man who settled in New York City had a long traditional resistance to oppression. We also went through that, and we know. In other words, this Juan Rodriguez owned his persona and behaved as such. Immigration probably represented additional degree of freedom for him as a Black or mulatto businessman, setting on a place where his skin color and his class background in 1613, we had to be careful, did not matter too much yet. From that angle, then, Juan Rodriguez's story is shared by many immigrants, today as well as in the past. He shared a desire to improve his destiny, a desire that is not found in one single group of people who live in a given region. Juan Rodriguez represents the diversity of the migrants who settled in this land in its early years. And of course, he was not English nor European. Rodriguez also showed that migration does not entail stealing from others or perpetuating violence upon the original inhabitants. It is clear that Rodriguez did not push the native population from their homes nor took their lands. He settled among them, and by doing so, he did what immigrants often tend to do, contribute to the new place where they build their new home. Indeed, Juan Rodriguez's skills and abilities became trademark of what would become New York City a few years later, a city that would be one of the most important and competitive commercial sites in the world. And I end by saying that, the push, with migration, there is a theorizing that speaks about push and pull. What compel or propel you to leave, and what sort of attract you on the new place that you go. And of course, I think that when you compare the La Española with the space in the Hudson, I think that there was, if you ask me, the possibility of Rodriguez to do his business in peace, as compared to doing his business in La Española, where he constantly had to justify and run away and hide from the Spanish authority, because it was illegal trading with the others, and Spain was, of course, not enough at this time. So that is the push, which is, in another word, economic forces, right? Economic reasons are pushing instability, if you want, pushing Rodriguez to leave. And the attraction is this space that he finds. Apparently, the Dutch people that he was dealing with, that he has experience with, are people that somehow are more tolerant. There are lots of research now being conducted on those Dutch, that were more tolerant than many people would think. So that is there, and of course, the Aboriginal population, where that he found here. So that is an area, and the possibility of conducting his business, I think it's the pull factor that made him to stay. And that, it's a question that bugs us over and over and over, because, not many people wanted to leave home just like that. And with this, I end my piece. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So we do have some time for questions. You can use the Q&A feature on Zoom if you have any questions for Dr. Hernandez. We have one question now, and that is, at the beginning of your talk, you mentioned a woman who chose death over submission. Could you repeat her name or the name of her culture if it is known?
In the name of a woman, I'm so sorry.
Yes, the woman you mentioned at the beginning of your talk, who chose death over submitting to
Oh, yes,
death.
yes. It's an Aboriginal woman, Anakaona, and the name it's written Anaho, Anakaona. I gotta write it down. Anakaona. It's not much is written about, and thank you for asking. I know the literary people had worked her from a literary point of view, right, from a fiction point of view, but she was flesh and blood, and and um, and this is not to put down any other group, but when you think of the negotiation or Hernán Cortés, the conquistador of Mexico, for instance, there's always this image that is presented to you by La Malinche. La Malinche. La Malinche is this Aboriginal woman that ended up, sleeping with a conquistador. And this has come down in history as historians have done with this. Imagine everything that you can imagine, with this action that happened. Perhaps a woman who didn't want to see no more killings, right? The Aboriginal population of Mexico, we're talking about millions as compared to in the massacre there. It's just unthinkable. So the reasons, who knows? But in the case of Nakaona, she chose just to be hanged, and they did. I mean, this is we have two cases in in Dominican historiography that, for whatever reason, feminists and historians sort of have let it go. That case, and then there's another case that goes back to 1844 during the independence of the establishment of the Dominican Republic. There's a woman that is killed exactly the first year of the establishment of the Republic. She's hanged, and she's hanged for opposition, political ideas. It wasn't that she was protecting her son, no, political ideas. And to me, it's so much, it tells so much about women resistance and the participation of women in society, not behind the scene, but right on the front. And that somehow has been overlooked. Thank you for asking. It is an incredible story because she is a chief. And that's another piece.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you very much. So that looks like the only question we have right now. So I just want to thank you, Dr. Ramona Hernandez, for this fantastic discussion. I want to thank all of our attendees. I hope that you enjoyed this talk. And I'd like to remind you that this was the second lecture in a series of 3 of our History in Focus lecture series. You can join us here next Wednesday, June 12th, at 12 p.m. on Zoom for When Old Uptown Was Young, Irish, Jewish, and Greek Immigrants in Washington Heights and Inwood, by Manhattan Borough historian Robert Spicer. Be sure to register through the link